The ex-comedian lived in a garden in South London. This had been his sanctuary ever since, in 1991, he had given up comedy on the advice of his doctors. Apparently, they had been to see his act and hadn't liked it very much. Racked with stage fright, he had spent the subsequent years in comedy retirement. But now his idyll was threatened. A character from his comedy past was appearing on television, in the newspapers, invading his sanctuary. To see an old colleague become successful made him aware of his own inadequacy. It made the past he thought he had long ago put behind him come gushing back to the surface, and his dreams were haunted by memories of his comedy rival, Richard Herring.
Check-up from the neck up. Yes, the lights are on, the doors are open, but Mr. Brain's not at home. He's fucking mad. What are you getting at? Well, that's why he's going to wear that bandage round his head. In fact, he's got old cross and he's got old myth. There's some book, and he's issuing death threats, because there's some book written by Willie Rushton. Rushton? That don't seem fair to it. What's Willie Rushton ever done to hurt anybody? Think of it, what's Willie Rushton ever done?
His life was irrevocably altered. The garden now felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. But then he had an idea. If he could only find his old colleague, talk to him, discover his essence, what made him tick, in short, find the real Richard Herring, he might find his own real self, and a way out of his present predicament. It was summer, and he knew where all the comedy gods would be. At the Edinburgh Festival. Rumour had it that Richard Herring was now so huge on the Edinburgh comedy scene that traffic had to be quite literally diverted around him. He was out there somewhere, and the ex-comedian knew he would find him. He was joined by an old friend also anxious to track Richard down. Apparently he'd lent him a $5 in 1986 and had never had it back. He was cool. Richard Herring's publicity was everywhere, but the man himself was harder to find. Meanwhile, his friend conducted a venue-to-venue search of the Fringe. But sightings were inconsistent, confused, contradictory. It was only when they thought of reading the name of Richard's venue on the poster that they started to get close. They visited a venue known as the Pleasance, and what sights assailed their eyes. But word had got round that 2 journalists were tracking down Richard Herring, and the comedy folk closed ranks against them. And with every blank they drew, the lower their spirits fell. But then the ex-comedian became aware of a figure he thought he recognized.
Richard? Excuse me, are you Richard Herring? You are Richard Herring, aren't you? Richard! Richard! Stop that man! Killed Richard Herring.
But when he turned the body over with his foot, the face that stared back at him was not Richard Herring's. It was his warm-up man's. It was futile. They only had 1 day left and hadn't even glimpsed their quarry yet. The anger and frustration made the ex-comedian's dreams start again.
No, if they're going to start issuing death threats, they should do it to someone who really deserves it, shouldn't they? Like Giles Brandreth. No, there's a fucking cunt, am I right?
Is it true that people in Newcastle ride around in cars and go and shit?
Dreams of alienation, and always the mocking face of the one who eluded them. The next day they returned to the Pleasance. As a final irony, the other comics had hired doubles of Richard Herring to throw them off the scent. Furthermore, the ex-comedian's friend had decided to give up the search. He had found his own people and elected to stay with them. Everything was falling apart. The whole quest had been a total farce from beginning to end. And then, out of nowhere, he appeared.
Richard, can you show us the real Richard Herring?
And then he was gone. So the ex-comedian returned to his garden in Clapham alone. But as he had boarded the train, a figure he vaguely recognized appeared out of the crowd and slipped a small disc into his hand. He had thought nothing of it at the time. It was only when he returned to his sanctuary that he examined this mysterious button. Perhaps he had found a kind of solace after all. Thanks, Richard.
You're prepubescent, but you are famous.